Hi, I'm Mike Hansmer. I'm here today with Edmund Noyes, who was a veteran of World War II from the U.S. Navy. Good afternoon, Ed.
Good afternoon.
Ed, I know you were born July 5th, 1921. Where were you born at?
In Newburyport, Massachusetts.
Massachusetts. Is that near Boston or near New
Yes,
Hampshire?
it's 36 miles north of Boston.
You had a couple years of high school, a few years of prep school. You got out of high school in 1939?
I got out of the high school level in 1939.
Where did you go
I
then?
had 2 years in Newburyport High School and 3 years at Governor Dummer Academy, and then on to Amherst.
And then you went to, after high school,
After Governor Dummer, I went to Amherst.
you went to Amherst. Okay. And you were at Amherst when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
Yes.
So what happened as your college education kept going? The war was on now, but you were still at Amherst.
That's right. I'm trying
Were you thinking that you were going to get drafted?
to... The way it worked out was that I stayed on at Amherst, and when it looked as though I was about to get drafted, I joined the Navy.
Okay.
And I don't think I did go back to school to finish it out, got my degree. So that worked out okay.
But in 1942 in October, you ended up going into the Navy,
Yeah,
right out of Boston. And what did you study to be?
I had a history major,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not sure I know why, but it was, I was able to, I was interested in reading, and reading of history. I don't know that it helped a whole lot in looking for work. But that's the way it was, and I finished it up when I got back out of the service.
Well, you were trained to be a signalman and a quartermaster originally? In the Navy?
Yes, I went in as a seaman second, and I selected the quartermaster rating, which quartermaster included signaling as well as certain low-level navigation issues and that sort of thing.
And while you're training, you got a call from Amherst? You got notified that you were graduating?
I'm a little confused on
I believe
that.
they said you had enough credits to graduate with the class in January
I
of
think
1943.
that's right. I think that's right. And so then this was ground rules they set up, I think, because of so many folks were in the service, and I had enough and
Did, they,
went to graduation.
did the
And,
Navy grant you leave to go attend your graduation
yeah,
ceremony?
I think so.
Great.
Yeah.
So now you've got a college degree, and now you have an option of being able to apply for a commission as an officer?
That's right.
Did you decide to do that?
And I did that,
Okay.
and got to be an ensign and communications focus.
And I think you had to wait, I think they required you to wait at least 6 months of service before you could actually apply to be an officer. So in the meantime, you were assigned to a ship out of Portland?
I was on the Fulmar out of
The
Portland.
Fulmar, USS
Yeah.
Fulmar.
That's it, and she was a minesweeper. And I was a combination signalman and helmsman and all that. because that boat was small enough so it only carried one person to cover those specialties.
Yes, I believe the whole crew was 15. It was a 100-foot
Yes,
long ship. Yes.
Yeah,
I think you also had to update the charts and make sure that the time was correct.
exactly right.
And the minesweeper, you learned how to disable 3 different types of mines?
I'm not sure that there were 3 different types of mines that were potentially used by the enemy, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think any of them had an impact on the time I was with the FOMA.
And you were guarding Portsmouth, Maine at the time,
Yeah,
or Portland, Maine.
Portland, Maine.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you never did run into any mines.
But that was fun because, in a way, because I knew Casco Bay from
Mm-hmm.
having vacation there every year of my life.
That was pretty good.
Yes, it was. And it brought up one other thing. In Halfway Rock Lighthouse,
Uh-huh.
I was able to see it close enough to be able to see the doors on it. And I had quite a number of years hoping I'd be able to someday, so I did, thanks to the Navy.
So you got closer with the minesweeper.
Yeah,
That's great. So now you've got your diploma, you're on the minesweeper, but now you got your opportunity. You've been in 6 months. Now you can join the officer program.
yep.
Where'd they send you?
Ooh,
Someplace hot?
yeah, it probably was, but I don't remember. It was a relatively short period of time.
I think you had a month of indoctrination school in Hollywood, Florida.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sounds good.
Any air conditioning in the school?
I'm not sure. I know it was hot down there.
It was hot. And after that, then you had 4 months. The next program was a 4-month program to teach you some technical naval skills.
Yeah,
And you had a lot of that already from college, didn't you? And from the time on coming into the minesweeper.
well, yeah, this was still as an enlisted,
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
far, yes.
yeah.
And they sent you to communication school
Yeah,
back up north.
yeah, I got.
Which college? You got to go to an Ivy League school again.
Oh, could have been. I don't know.
I think it was Harvard.
Okay,
You were back up to Harvard. You got there in November of 1943.
okay.
And somewhere along the way while you were there, you managed to find some time to get married to Sally.
Yes, I did.
And she was your wife for 50 years.
Yeah,
Well, after you became an officer, after you got through all that training, this was April of 1944, and you got assigned to the USS Augusta.
yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that ship and what you did there.
Well, that ship was one of its class, and it was designed to have a carry an admiral aboard.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, that gave it a little bit of class above some of the other ships, and I was in the communication department there with the specialty of visual signals,
Mm-hmm.
and that was, in fact, there was visual signals that didn't lead to it, but because I was in the communication department, part of my regular job was breaking messages coming in over the radio
Decoding them.
and decoding
Mhm.
them, and we had the security and all that of the proper coding devices, and so we were able to do that.
The Augusta was usually the main ship in a convoy, the flagship. So you would
Quite
be the lead
often.
ship. And
Yeah.
oftentimes you would have to send signals out to the other ships and tell them what to do.
Yeah.
Did you do that with,
Well, this is, it was, most of that would have been done through the flag hoist for
the
one.
flags?
For flashing light,
Mhm.
Morse code. They had 12-inch lights with the shutters on them.
So you would
Yeah,
send
that's-
signals to the other ships and tell them what they needed to do, and they
That's
would have
right.
to respond back to you.
That's right. And they had a regular system. If it was something that was going to happen now, the message was sent out, and the folks who were receiving it signaled us by holding a steady light, letting us know that they would, letting us know they understood it.
Oh, okay.
And then it was executed when we killed our light. So everybody had to look at us, and the folks in charge said, "This is it,"
Very good.
and they would follow.
You said it was rigged for extra people, for some VIPs to come on board. When there were no VIPs on board, who got to use the extra rooms?
Well, that's right. Oh gosh, that's true. It was rigged for I don't know how many extra bunk rooms and that sort of thing. Of course, it started with the admiral, that moved down to our captain and his department heads, and it was perfectly logical. And then when his folks came, the admiral's folks came ashore, they just were, most of the officers were assigned rooms, bunks, beds, whatever.
They took the good cabins and put you back in the other ones.
Oh, right, yeah.
So you crossed the Atlantic in April of 1944 with Admiral Kirk. Rear Admiral Kirk was on board, and he was going to lead the gunnery on D-Day. And
Yes.
you probably didn't get invited to lunch with them, but after they got across to England, King George VI of England came on board the Augusta to have lunch with Admiral Kirk.
Well, I remember him being aboard.
Yeah. He was on board a couple of times. He was on board a couple of times on your ship.
Yeah.
So as D-Day was getting closer, you have some recollections of ships flying over, planes flying over, ships coming by as you were getting ready for D-Day?
The D-Day.
Mm-hmm.
Draw a blank on that
That's
at
okay.
this point.
I know General Omar Bradley came on your ship, and he was
Oh,
going to direct
yeah.
the ground assault
Yeah.
from the Augusta.
Yeah.
And Admiral Kirk was handling the shelling of the Normandy beaches with the battleships and the cruisers and the destroyers.
Yeah.
So you were pretty busy.
Yeah. Well, this is while we were over there.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
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 Ed, you did something pretty amazing while you were over there. During the month of June 1944, you actually started keeping a journal of observations and different things that you saw and did
Yeah.
during D-Day and right afterwards. And I know it's a very long set of notes that you did, but we brought some along and thought you might like to just read them verbatim. I
Oh.
think people would find them very interesting.
Oh, okay.
If you've got your reading glasses, you can
Yeah.
go for it.
Oh, that's this?
That's this. Yes, it is,
Oh,
sir.
God. Just want me to read right through?
Just read it. Yep. You and your son went through it. Should be in good shape.
The following was written between the dates of June 6th and June 22nd, 1944, aboard the USS Augusta, capital C, capital A-31. It is almost beyond the comprehension of ordinary mortals. It is even almost beyond the comprehension of a great many of the men who actually, or who are actually, in the operation itself. It is the extensive planning and the months of thought and detailed research which go into making an operation of this size a success. With it, the planning, in parentheses, a minimum of lives are lost, and the maximum amount of territory is gained in the shortest space of time. Without it, failure might be the result, if not, at least an untold number of extra lives would certainly be lost as payment for the lack of foresight and preparedness of the High Command. In this operation, there was no question of lack of preparedness. Plans had been in the making for a matter of years rather than months. All of the available data that could be gathered together was laid before the High Command in order that it might carry out its work as the brains of the invasion more adequately. In the immediate months preceding the invasion with which I am the most familiar, there was an unceasing routine of changing this and that little detail to conform with the additional data received through intelligence or reconnaissance. A continual flow of traffic, communications, that's in parentheses, went among members of the High Command in order to ensure that when D-Day arrived, all would be in readiness. It was to be a combined land, sea, and air assault, and it was no small matter to coordinate these three services, period. Split-second timing was the greatest problem, for without it there was grave danger of blasting friendly troops, or possibly, of giving support too late, period. Means had to be devised for landing materials, as well as the inevitable task of evacuating the casualties from the beaches, period. Paragraph. The actual invasion began on June 6th. We left anchor, parenthesis, from Plymouth, end of parenthesis, early in the afternoon of the 5th. And after picking up a convoy and escorts, headed for the coast of France. A certain amount of surprise was counted on, and it was received, period. The force ghosted along in the black of the night, a force larger than had ever sailed to the attack, period, on this comma. Or had ever sailed before, for that matter, period. It was far greater than that which took Casablanca by complete surprise at the early stages of the war. Parenthesis, the Augusta was at Casablanca and also and transported General Patton, end of parenthesis. Because of its size, the operation had to be a success. It would be months and possibly years before another such force could again be assembled. Period. Everyone knew that this was it. I've got it in capital letters. Everyone knew that this was a moment to go down in history, and everyone knew that we were going into France, come hell, high water, snow, sleet or rain. The best men in the business were behind the scenes. The best men in the business were at the scenes. And the best men in the business were going into France. Period. End of paragraph. As it turned out, each day here saw restrictions relaxed a little more. After the first day, we were eating much in the regular manner, except that it was buffet style due to the fact that the mess boys were standing gun watches. Period. The water was turned on from sunup until the first air raid at night. That's a period. We were allowed to turn back the fireproof covers on our beds, so we were able to indulge in some honest-to-goodness sleep, period. Instead of standing continuous watches and sleeping on station when circumstances permitted, the ship was put on a watch basis. This allowed the men and officers, though they spent considerable more time at battle stations than usual, to get a little relaxation. All of this time we were theoretically at general quarters, but we had never been secured from that state of readiness, period. Even when we had air raids, the rules stayed loose because only the anti-aircraft guns had to be manned. To date, we had not shot them, parenthesis, anti-aircraft guns in the parenthesis, at all, because to do so at night would result in giving away the position of the flagship, parenthesis, Augusta, under parenthesis, and judging from the display of traces in the sky during attack, our own bullets would be unable to find a square inch of sky not already in use. Period. A great many of the crew and officers are voicing displeasure at the failure of the ship to participate in much of the gunfire. And paragraph. This failure to shoot more often had reason as its basis, though the reason isn't readily apparent. Period. The Augusta is a controlling ship, with its power as man of war secondary to the more important one of supervising the landing and unloading of 2,000 or more ships. Period. We are a reserve fire support unit to be called upon if needed. Period. When the flag gets off this canoe, it is the general opinion that we will get enough shooting to satisfy even the most displeased man on the ship. For the coast of France is long and there are many gun emplacements which to date have not even been scratched by either guns or bombs, period. Time will settle the question. Now this is June 22nd. The past few days, while not drastic, have been very critical. For 2 weeks we had varying degrees of weather, but none so bad it curtailed small craft operations to any great extent, period. Beginning 4 days ago, things changed for the worst. Not only did we get a wind that reached and maintained gale force, but it was accompanied by extremely rough seas, period. Many small craft were lost. Men were lost over the side, parenthesis, one of ours, end of parenthesis. and breakwaters and pierheads were damaged, many beyond repair. Period. The first day it was possible to continue unloading some of the LSTs, so some supplies and men were able to get ashore, but even then it was impossible to get the smaller craft out to the large ships for unloading. The next 2 days saw almost complete absence of supplies going to the beaches, period. Convoys from England were stopped, and some of the tugs that began the trip before the storm hit have not been heard from, period. Vital supplies are now on the bottom of the channel. Dash, the loss of life. Question mark. No one knows the actual account yet. The need for ammunition on the beach became pressing, period. Ships were going to be beached this morning despite the weather in order to get supplies to the Army, period. Fortunately, things eased up somewhat, Dash. Now the sun is out and the sea fairly calm, seemingly in complete ignorance of the damage it caused during the past 72 hours, period. Many small landing craft were hit with all their crews, and unknown damage has been done to ships likely enough to survive, or lucky enough to survive, period. One of the greatest troubles was in anchor change breaking, period. Ships with this problem had to ride the storm out under power, beach the ship, or return to England. Today, bodies floating by have not been uncommon sights, each a mute testimony of the strength and power of the storm. This is the end of the road.
That's the end of the road. Quite a story, Ed. That was amazing. That was amazing. But that wasn't the end of your service.
What?
That was not the end of your service. After D-Day and after patrolling
Yeah.
the shores of Normandy, the Augusta took off again. Do you recall where you went next?
We probably took somebody somewhere.
We had to. I think we had to take care of southern France first.
That's where we were anchored for the most part, off southern France.
Yes, you swung around to support the invasion of southern France.
Yeah.
Then you got to fire some weapons. You got to fire your big guns down there.
Yeah, we did a little bit.
You fired 700 rounds of 8-inch ammunition.
Oh,
Most
is
you've
that
ever
right?
done. Yes.
Okay.
Then you headed back to the Philadelphia Naval Yard, finally, for an extensive overhaul.
Yeah, it needed it.
It needed it, yeah. And they came you out, you did some refresher training, a few miscellaneous duties, and then in July of 1945, you had to ferry somebody important across the water again.
Oh, God, did we ever.
Who was it this time?
I'm forgetting which one it was. Which president?
Well, President Roosevelt had died, so
Yeah. I don't get the name at the moment.
Harry Truman.
Harry Truman.
Harry Truman
Yeah.
jumped on board your ship,
Yep.
took him across. Do you remember where you went to?
Not sure. I think we were in this. No, I'd be guessing.
He was going to the conference that became known as the Potsdam Conference.
Oh, that's why he was going over.
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Took him to Antwerp,
Yeah.
and from there on into Germany.
Yeah.
While you're in Antwerp, you had another visitor come on board, General Eisenhower.
Okay. Yeah.
And then you were waiting for him to come back. And when he came back, King Henry VI came on board again for another lunch. And I bet you still weren't invited.
So,
And And you took President Truman home, and as you were going home in August of 1945,
Yeah,
he, and,
we were going home in every sense of the word then.
he told you about something that had happened in the Pacific in Japan, didn't he?
Oh yeah, the peace.
He announced to your ship that the H-bomb had been dropped in Hiroshima.
The what?
He announced to your crew that the atomic bomb had just been dropped
Oh
in
yes,
Hiroshima.
yes, yeah.
So you came home and the war finally ended, and you were still in the Navy. They had a big Navy Day celebration in New York in October. Did you participate in that?
Yes, that's right.
Did you find a way to get to see your wife then?
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
I don't know. I saw she came down.
Did you find a way to finagle her a trip out to your ship?
Yeah, I think we did that
Yeah.
too. No, she was.
And by this time you had your first child, didn't you? Ted?
Yeah, it did.
Ted was around. The Augusta Ferry troops, you made a few more trips back and forth across the Atlantic, bringing home more
That's
service
right.
people.
Yeah, and I
from
don't think I
England
was
back home.
aboard then. I think I was long gone.
You got out in December of 45.
Yeah.
And the Augusta got put out of commission in July of 46 and was eventually sold for scrap, but it was quite a ship.
Yes.
You
Well,
had quite
then
a
she,
time on her.
they took her out of. I think she'd been put on the shelf,
Hmm.
and they put her back in the commission.
So after you got out of the Navy, where'd you go?
I went right to New Britain,
Mhm.
Connecticut.
Who'd you work for?
Stanley Works.
Stanley. Stanley Works. They have a branch. That's the Stanley Hardware we all are familiar with as well.
That's the headquarters
division?
of
Mhm.
it there. And the tool plant was there. The hardware plant was there. And I wound up spending, I think the automatic doors
Uh-huh.
was this kind of what do I want to call it? Not a really big commercial
It's
outfit.
probably
It
something
was
new
just
back then.
kind of. Well, you're glad you had it because it was exciting, but about that time they began to realize that they had something, and they started to really move,
Hmm.
and they put up a new building, and I think devoted one floor to the automatic door control, and that new building was I think after the war. Beautiful building.
So you made a career out of Stanley. You made a career out of Stanley.
I made a career out of Stanley.
That's great.
Never looked back.
You married to Sally for 50 years, and after she passed away, you married Helene Friedlander Anderson for another 20 years, another
Yeah.
20 good years.
Yep.
Now you're here in Hudson. Your daughter Nancy visits you quite often.
Yeah, well, I haven't been here too long,
No.
so I don't know what.
It's quite a story and quite a life, Ed.